Welcome to Mrs. Vellables World Geography class. In today's video we're going to covering analyzing spatial relationships, and we want to understand how places affect other places. The first thing we need to do is define analyzing. And simply put, analyzing means examining details to discover or reveal something. So analyzing means we're taking a very close look at a city, at a school, at a park, you name it, whatever it is, and we want to find the details that help us understand or discover things about the school or the city. So we examining details to discover or reveal something. So the next question is, why do we analyze? What's the purpose of analyzing? And I want you to think of an example of something people analyze. We analyze so that we can better understand situations and make clearer decisions. So that's the reason why we analyze. An example of something that you analyze every day, it's a subconscious analysis, but it is what you do every day, is we analyze the people around us. We look for details about what their mood is and how they're feeling and what do they think about me and how do those details help me understand how I need to act around that person, or if I even want to hang out with that person. So those are things that's one thing that you analyze on a daily basis, although it's subconscious, but you are analyzing. So in geography, why do we need to analyze how places relate to one another? And we're talking about places, maybe it's countries, maybe it's cities, maybe it's two different schools, but why do we need to know how they relate? Well, the first point here is that each place affects each other. So there's not a place on earth that exists independently. What happens in one area of the world can affect another area of the world. So we want to be able to analyze those places and understand why and how they affect each other. Finding connections and understanding relationships helps us to better understand the world around us. If we look at the details and we understand how places are connected and the relationships that they have, then we have a better understanding of the world and we can operate within that a lot easier. And then it helps us understand questions like, where will the next zombie attack be? As you recall, we're tracking zombie attacks and trying to prevent the zombie apocalypse in geography. It can also help us answer, where do people travel? All of these, any of these questions, the where type questions, is what analysis will help us with. Excuse me. So then the next thing, if we're doing spatial analysis, what does spatial mean? In geography, when you hear the term spatial, we're talking about space. Now, it's not outer space that we're talking about, but space, a room that you sit in, a classroom that you sit in is space. The park is a space. A city is a space. So that's what the word spatial is referring to. And spatial relationship is we want to look at how spaces relate to each other. How are they connected? What do they have in common? And what makes them related to one another? And so that brings us to analyzing spatial relationships. And there are 3 steps to analyzing spatial relationships. And so we're going to go over those steps so that when you're asked to analyze spatial relationships, you understand what you need to do first, second, and third. The first thing you need to do is identify the structures. And that's basically, what am I going to look at? What am I trying to find the details about? So our structures, you have to have a minimum of 2. You can have more, but you have to have a minimum of 2 structures. And those 2 places can be analyzed. It's either going to be 2 cities, 2 countries, maybe 2 neighborhoods. Maybe we want to look at the spatial relationship between 2 schools, or all of the schools within a district. So those are the structures. That's what we're going to look for details of. The second step is identifying the relationships between those structures. So we want to identify any connections between the structures that we are analyzing. So if we're looking at cities, the relationships or the connections that they may have. They may be connected by highways or different roads. Maybe they're connected by sharing the same border. It could be rivers or any other physical features that they might have in common that could connect them. Maybe they have a train that goes there's a railroad that connects them. Anything that moves things in and out, or ideas in and out. So they can be connected by the internet and by phones and things of that nature. So those are your relationships. You're identifying how your structures are connected. And then the third step is the process. We want to analyze what happens across those connections. So when we're analyzing what happens across the connections, we want to look at what is moving along that connection. How does it move along those connections? How often is movement happening along those connections? And then, once we have all that data, we have what we need to analyze the spatial relationships between 2 or more places.